enjoy it. I'm going to be speaking about the ancestral maps for modern psychedelic therapy as a way of learning from the Mazatec's cosmology. Let us remember that the first time that Western civilization came to know about the sacred mushrooms, it was through the encounter of Gordon Wasson and the Mazatec healer and sage Maria Sabina, which showed him their sacred traditions and their way of healing through the mushroom ceremony. I'm honored to participate in Mexico's first government-approved and financed psychedelic research project, alongside some of the best researchers in Mexico, such as Anja Loizaga, which is also going to be in this event speaking. This research project is called the Dialogue of Knowledge about the Therapeutic Potential of Psilocybin-containing Mushrooms, a transdisciplinary study through neuroscience, psychology, anthropology, history, biology, and traditional indigenous knowledge. We try to bridge modern psychotherapy and science with ancient indigenous wisdom. So, in order for us to study this and to bridge these different perspectives and cosmologies and ways of understanding healing, we need to see the different variables that influence experience, such as set, substance, setting, also participants, integration, and the worldview that contains this practice. Because it's a really different perspective and very different ways of doing healing. In the Mazatec culture, a mushroom ceremony is called a velada, and it is guided by a shotashine, which means the sage, the healer, the man or woman of knowledge, or the shaman. The velada is understood as a ritual in which the individual opens itself to the spiritual realm, the world of spirit, and it's a bridge of communication between the human world and the spiritual geography, the sacred realms. Becoming conscious of the subtle aspects of human being and being able to journey and travel along these different layers of reality. This ceremony is usually done in the darkness and in silence as a way of an appropriate atmosphere or inner journey. And there are sometimes some prayers and rituals done as a way of pointing out the moments in which we need to take consciousness of different aspects of our lives. So I focused mainly on studying the Mazatec's altar as a symbolic map of the spiritual geography. For them, they have this idea that the altar is a microcosmic representation of the huge structure of the cosmos. And operations in front of the altar are a way of synchronizing the inner and the outer world, the micro and the macrocosm. Also, they perform these symbolic acts and rituals as a way to connect with the mythical ontology, and they use these ritual elements and images of saints and divinities and symbol and prayers and all of these symbolic objects that serve as signs and reminders that orient and guide the traveler to navigate safely in the different regions of the spiritual geography. So, one of the dimensions of this altar is what I call the horizontal dimension. And normally the table is set with center, which usually is a cross or maybe a flower. And then there are 4 directions: north, south, east, and west. And these are understood as the sacred geometry as of the world soul. The 4 corners of the world and the center of the cosmos, which is Christ, and Christ is understood for them as a representation of man in the world. Therefore, human being is identified with this center of the world, and so is considered as a microcosmic image of totality. And during this velada, this mushroom ritual, one remembers this ancestral memory, its place in the universe, and so the ego's perception of being separated from everything else is solved, because then he is identified with the center of the world, and so therefore it's connected to everyone else. It's part of this cosmic web of life, and it is the revelation that we are all part of this all-encompassing unity, that we are one, and that every action that we do affects the totality. Within this cosmology, self and other are just different aspects of the same one being. The other dimension is the vertical dimension, which they represent by the table is the middle world, and then what's below the table, it's considered as the underworld, the place of the dead and the ancestors. And then there's usually an arc above the table, and this is considered as the upper world, the residence of gods and saints. And sometimes they represent 13 different kind of, like, they call it churches or heavens, and they are considered as different levels of the pilgrimage of the sun. The sun goes around the cosmos in a cyclic way, and this represents eternity. Like, we can go up or down, but then it is a cyclical process. When we die, we go to the underworld, and then by purifying ourselves, we can transcend to the upper world. And then we go back to the middle world, and this is a cyclical process. And during the ceremony, the individual is understood as having a flight to go see the other levels of reality. So it can be perceived not just in the visible realm, but also in the invisible layers of reality. So, what can we learn from this ancient wisdom? Well, for instance, they believe that we are interwoven with this divine unity. We're all one. We're in a community with other entities and animals and plants, not just human beings. And therefore we have cosmic responsibility. Everything we do affects the others. Also, by acknowledging the ancestors, we recognize that we are part of a bigger whole. They also have this law of reciprocity, and whatever you take from the spirit world, you need to give back. You need to give something back so you can restore the balance. In this cosmology, illness is understood as an imbalance in relationship with otherness. It could be a spiritual otherness or natural otherness, and illness is then thought of as caused by some fault, some grievance, some offense, or some unconscious or ignorant action that harms another person, or society, or nature, or a spiritual being. And healing comes when we act in a conscious and reciprocal way and pay our debts to this bigger community. So for them, mythology is a shared imaginary that gives shape to the visible forces that unconsciously influence us. They call these gods, saints, and spirits. And it could be that this is what modern psychotherapy calls unconscious complex and archetypes and drives. Also, for the Mastic cosmology, personhood is understood as an open ocean, meaning like we are not isolated beings, but we are, even if we don't see or interact consciously with the invisible realm, we are somehow interwoven into this bigger net of beings. So what can we take as a practical applications from this indigenous wisdom? Well, first of all, we need to know that yes, we can learn from these ancient maps, but we should not be taking them as sort of appropriation. Instead, be inspired, but do not copy or replicate these traditions. Let us understand these maps as an inspiration for us to create our own maps and try to bridge the ancient knowledge with modern psychotherapy without appropriation. So, as a way of creating an intercultural therapy, maybe we can take the altar as a way of bringing symbols of everyone's participating in a ceremony or a mushroom therapy, and the altar can be a place where everyone can put something that is sacred for them, that reminds them of what's important for everyone. And also, getting to know one's ancestry is an exercise of broadening our sense of identity, meaning we are not alone. We carry with us our ancestors, our father and mother and grandparents, and they are also part of me. By acknowledging them, we can expand our identity and therefore connect ourselves, our ego, to a bigger whole, to the invisible realm of those who have gone, those who have come before me. Also, one thing we can learn from them is that the Mastic take the whole mushroom instead of just using the psychotic extract or the psilocybin, because they treat it as an entity. It's someone with whom you can relate, you can ask for guidance and create a relationship of respect. And they also have a preparation through diet and behavioral restrictions, but also integration by asking for you to give back to the spirits, to make an offering after the ceremony, to give maybe an offering of cacao or some incense or copal or whichever, but it's a way of honoring what you understood and what you learned from this experience, and give back something to create a balance. And ritual and prayers are also used as activations for guiding the journey. And this is something that we can also integrate into our own modern psychotherapy practices. So anyway, this is what I wanted to share with you. I hope that this serves as an inspiration to find bridges between modern psychotherapy and indigenous wisdom. And I want to thank everyone over there for bridging the community of psychedelic activists and researchers. and I hope you keep enjoying this wonderful symposium. Goodbye.
Thank you. Okay. I suggest we continue with the two of you, and then we have a discussion.
Great. Okay. Hello, everyone. Good morning. So, I hope you don't mind if I stand. I'm a little bit wanting to move around. And yeah, maybe it's nice for us all. We've been kind of sitting, listening with the screen to also move a bit. So if you want to just take a stretch, go for it. Yeah. Yeah, maybe a shake. Maybe turning the wrists and the neck. Maybe a big yawn. Okay, and when you're ready, you can take a seat again if you feel like it. And now let's just move for a moment inwards. So maybe you want to lower the gaze or close the eyes for a moment and just connect with your body. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? Yeah, so just connecting with the body, how it's supported by the earth beneath you. Feeling the sensations of the body, the temperature of the air. Feeling the breath moving in and out of the body. And let's take a moment together to acknowledge, to give thanks to the air that is entering our body, allowing us to breathe, allowing our voices to be heard. And giving thanks to the earth beneath us that supports us, that grounds us, that carries us here together. And to the water that cleanses us, that may have cleansed us this morning, that hydrates us, that flows through our bodies. And to the fire that really brings us here today. So both the fire of the rising sun this morning, but also that inner fire, that spark of curiosity, of passion, that brings us together to spark new ideas. And now if there are any other elements, teachers, guides that you would like to call into this space, this is the moment to do so. I give thanks to my mother, Esther, to my grandmother, Esther, to my brother, Hiroe. I give thanks to Regina for organizing this, for inviting me. And I give thanks to the mushroom spirits, the mycelium underneath our feet that connects us all. So let's take a breath together exhaling, completely emptying the lungs, then inhaling deeply through the nose. And release. And let's begin. So welcome back. My name is Hannah. On this integration panel, I'm here to talk a bit about disintegration and also collective transformation. It's quite a big topic, of course, but my intention really is not to speak truth as much as to spark some truth within you, to spark some new ideas, some new inquiries, really. Okay. So first, a bit about me. My name is Hannah. I am a facilitator with a strong focus on integration. So I work with truffle psilocybin retreat centers here in the Netherlands, alongside organizing my own women's retreats. And besides that, also facilitating integration groups and programs, also together with the Mind Foundation. And funnily enough, it was in one of these programs that Andres and I met a couple of years ago. So it's quite special that we're here together on a panel of integration. So, we cannot talk about integration without talking about disintegration. They are two poles of the same construct, two parts of the same snake, if you will. So we are constantly integrating and we are constantly disintegrating. There was, I don't remember his name, the gentleman downstairs talking about polarity, and when we are in one pole, this contains elements of the other pole. So the same applies for integration, disintegration. So when we are committing ourselves to integration, we are also committing ourselves to disintegration. And actually many so-called integration practices, I'm thinking meditation, breath work, losing yourself in music and dancing, these sort of trance states can be also thought of as disintegration practices. And of course, many of us seek disintegration through our plant medicine journeys, through our psychedelic experiences. We seek this dissolution of the ego, the breakdown of who we think we are. And paradoxically, it's in these moments of disintegration where we often feel a deep sense of integration in its truest meaning, right? So integrare meaning wholeness, or this kind of moving towards wholeness to unity. So we see the value of disintegration in this way, yet in the mainstreaming of psychedelics into Western models of health and of therapy, there is a large focus on integration, this kind of concept of integration that is getting a lot of attention, a buzzword of sorts, which is also a great thing, don't get me wrong, but it's almost as if our psychedelic experiences, our disintegration, are there to serve a singular purpose, and that is to further our integration journeys, our understanding of what we think is moving towards healing. And that in itself is negating, in a way, the inherent value of these disintegration experiences. So this is where some potential issues can arise. So psychedelic integration in the Western perspective is most often spoken about from the perspective of the self, the individual, the ego, using questions like, how can I integrate my experience into my daily life? How can I extract value, extract meaning from my experience? Or how can I use my experience to grow? And do you see the potential problems with the languaging of these questions? I mean, they're fair questions, absolutely, but they're also limited because they're coming from this Western individualist point of view that is based on colonial ideas of extraction and judging value based on utility. So there are a couple of other challenges here. So when we are viewing our experience from the perspective of the self, from how it benefits the self, not only are we at risk of ego inflation, but we are also creating division and separation within our experience. So by saying things like, here are the valuable parts of my experience, this is what I want to look at, these shapes and colors, meaningless, so I'm not going to look at those. We're already creating a separation within our experience. And the experience in that way becomes yours, your property, your entitlement, your farmland, if you will, rather than, and this is what Bayo Okomolafe, this philosopher and self-proclaimed recovering psychologist, refers to an experience as a crisscrossing nexus of more than human agency at play. And there's another challenge of this individualized perspective, which is that it is possible then to fall into this spiral of continuous psychologized self-improvement and kind of addictive self-healing, or doing the work, as is so often said these days, that may reinforce actually an underlying assumption of, I'm not good enough as I am, or there's something wrong with me, or I need to be fixed. And of course there's a lot more nuance here that we can discuss, but this is a pattern that I see among participants, among clients quite often. So after our plant medicine experiences, our psychedelic experiences, in our rush to pick up the pieces, to integrate, there tends to be an underemphasis on another important part of the integration process, and that is getting lost. So to get lost is to learn the way. Being lost is being in this space of disintegration. Being lost is this entering the unknown, this space of infinite possibility. And being lost is also a threat to being a productive member of a capitalist society. So being lost is potentially revolutionary. And it is a space that can be embraced rather than run away from in search of wholeness, grasping onto threads of familiarity as we spiral further into disintegration. For again, paradoxically, and when we're in paradox, we know that we're getting a little bit closer to truth, right? Disintegration is the highway to integration. So let me plant that potential thought. Disintegration is the highway to integration. Have I lost you? I hope so. I'm curious, how many of you have felt lost following a psychedelic experience or a plant medicine experience? And how many of you have consciously make time to get lost? So getting lost in a forest, in a town, maybe in a novel, yeah? That's another seed to plant. Getting lost. Because getting lost takes time and space, right? It means not just jumping back into our daily lives, into our work, into the shape of who we were before, like kind of hastily reconfiguring ourselves into who we were, but rather it is giving ourselves space to take a new shape. And as an individual, especially in this kind of Western society, it's very easy to think, well, I can't afford to get lost, I don't have time for that. But as a collective, here's another question, can we afford not to get lost? So, onwards to collective transformation. I hope I've demonstrated a little bit by now that a self-centered view of integration leads to disintegration, and disintegration leads to integration. So how does that bring us towards transformation? Well, transformation, this changing shape, right, is reflective of the process of disintegrating in order to reintegrate and reconfigure ourselves into new shapes. And we know that on an individual level, right, disintegration allows us to dismantle our belief systems, our egoic structures, our personality. And that carries over as well to a cultural or a collective level, this dismantling of ideas. It's almost as if we are a cloud that is disintegrating to reveal a clear blue sky. And in this blue sky, there is that space of potentiality, of possibility. So it's this sort of stepping into the unknown as an individual, yes, but also as a culture or as a collective to make space for new adventures, for new ways of being and becoming. And perhaps new ways of relating both to one another and to our psychedelic experiences. So moving towards, or moving from a more extractive relationship to a reciprocal relationship, as Mario spoke about. This reciprocal relationship with experiences, right? Or moving from ego-serving to more eco-serving. So it's from this space of losing our way, this initiation of sorts, that there's the opportunity for transformation into new shapes. So on this cloudy day today, I invite you to go out later and maybe just have a look at the clouds and imagine yourself as this one little water droplet as part of this collective cloud. So that brings me towards the end. I will just go over a few main takeaways if I didn't lose you along the way. So disintegration, integration should be considered together. So rather than focusing on integration as a standalone concept, let's broaden our discourse to encompass disintegration, integration as an interconnected cycle. And this is also emphasizing integration not as a goal to reach, but as a cyclical process, including disintegration. So it's not a goal of I'm going to be an integrated human. And that means also embracing being lost, right? So instead of rushing to be found, slowing down and enjoying the journey. So ending on a kind of celebratory note. Instead of needing to extract the gold from an experience, how can we celebrate it for what it is in its entirety? So that's it from me. Thank you very much. And if you want to get in touch, then...
Thank you.
So I suggest we listen to everybody and then we have questions, discussions. It's okay?
Yeah.
Shoot.
Yep. Thank you. Take this. If you don't mind. Hello all. My name is Andres. Really happy to be here. I am one of the co-founders of psychedelics.com. We are a platform trying to help people going through the experience, supporting with preparation and integration. And the topic of my talk, or what I'm going to go around circles and keep back, is this concept of chakaruna. Chakaruna is Quechua, and it means, translated like man bridge, or a man or a person who is a bridge. And this is how I happen to see the whole scheme of what we are trying to do and what we are trying to work on psychedelics.com. But first, I don't know if you know what it is. That's a bridge in my country. It's not the most efficient bridge, but allows to put us in the middle. I am from Uruguay in South America, so it's a country which I am in South America, but we unfortunately have lost most of the indigenous knowledge in our country. Yet I was living in Berlin when I was somehow lost and thinking about looking for more meaning or solutions. I thought that going to an ayahuasca retreat was a great idea. So I ended in an island in Denmark, actually going to a retreat. So it's a bit of a story because I am not a psychologist, so I don't come from studying, I just come from the other side, because I went into that island being convinced atheist and materialistic on my worldview, and a couple of hours later I was talking to God. And God was a tree, and it was beautiful. And it was the most meaningful experience of my life, probably. The problem is that normally these stories end there, and not when you come home to your small apartment in Berlin, and you cannot leave your apartment for 2 weeks, because you cannot just take yourself out of the room. So I went into, later I got to know as a spiritual emergency. That time I didn't know what was happening to me apart of me losing my mind. And this is how psychedelics integration idea comes to be. I thought, wow, in that time I was lucky enough that literally a therapist landed on my apartment. My friend came to visit and said, my therapist is around the corner. And I was like, I need a therapist. And this person knew about integration, and she helped me through going through this. This is probably one of the most challenging times in my life. So I said, well, this is maybe something I can help with to connect people, to try to bring this into it. And this is what I want to read, and take 1 second to read this quote. Jake Smavit is the founder of Taquihuasi Center in Peru. And he wrote in this article, La Hora de los Chacarunas, which means the time of the Chacarunas. He wrote this quote, which I think resonates a lot with me. Through his desperate search for answers to his existential uneasiness, the Western subject, submerged in desacralized society, risked finding this path to the other dimension, desecrated the sacred plants of different cultures, deep into his consumerist and quick scheme. He dared to enter into this archetypal world without guide, protection, or return signs. Releasing himself from the ritual rules, he trespassed universal laws. He started an erratic and reckless quest. Similar to the flight of Icaro, trying to take for himself the truth, the knowledge, the wisdom, without learning the path and without a clear intention, and he got lost. Without contention, he exploded. Without integration of the experience, he disintegrated. He mistook the ego expansion for the expansion of consciousness. This is what happened to me, basically. So I was really happy to find the quote. I was like, oh yeah, that resonates a lot. And I don't know if you know about Jake Smavit and Taquihuasi, but he is a great example of this Chacaruna concept. He's a French doctor who ended in Peru working there with addiction and working with a beautiful mix of vegetalismo, so the traditional way of working with plant medicine in Peru, and at the same time with psychotherapy and Western measures on it. And the results are great. There are some many studies, so I would recommend you to check them out. And so this brings me to the topic, right? Bridging the tradition with our current world, the Chacaruna. We must remember that these medicines are ancient technologies, where in these cultures, everything around the use and how and what and the process, it's clearly ritualized, and there is a clear administration of that. And when someone goes and drinks ayahuasca or takes a part in a mushroom ceremony, it's not just taking a substance. You are taking into your own reality a new cosmovision that comes with these plants, which have been built through the paradigm of allyship or cooperation with the plants for centuries, and not the one we have, which is more of a consumption of something to get to an effect. Our reality, what we bring to these situations, bring new uses for it, and that's true. I mean, we all have heard about treating for depression or addiction, or what it could be as mostly or at the beginning the Western issues. And this meeting of cosmovision at the same time brings a lot of challenges. In different levels, I'm going to just now focus on the psychological level, what we are seeing, which is when unprepared for this, when completely unaware of this could be happening, this can risk to be developing into a spiritual emergency. And this is something that unfortunately we are seeing a lot on our platform. Many people reaching out already when they are struggling, they haven't sleeping weeks, they have, and this is something I want to make an emphasis on this, because, I mean, many people here are therapists and working here for many times, so I'm pretty sure you are more aware of this than I am. But for me it was a surprise, shock, because when I went to do ayahuasca, the only thing I hear about it was great stuff. and everything was going to be fine, and I could do it perfectly fine. And this brings us again to the concept of chakaruna. We were asking ourselves, how can we help? And the idea is, we can be these bridges. We can try to bring a bit the focus out of the medical use, which is great, don't take me wrong. I love that the stigma is fading away. I love that we are also using our own ways of seeing reality to analyze these medicines. But there is, I mean, we all have seen it, a strong kind of wishful picture in the mainstream media. We all have here of the next star or the next, How to Change Your Mind, and which is a great book. The series also is good, but it's everywhere, right? How psychedelic mushrooms help me to overcome XV. It's just enough to look for psychedelics, and the news are pretty rosy. And we are seeing big challenges, especially coming from lack of proper preparation. And as Jacques Malvin puts really well there, approaching these medicines without respect is a bad idea. But don't take me wrong, I'm a big fan. Ayahuasca and plant medicine changed my life, and this is what we are trying to do here. We believe that an integrated way of using these medicines can allow us to become an extension of this into our daily lives, bringing the ceremony into our work, into our daily life, job, family. And this point is in the middle of this bridge in a way. It's like where tradition meets our Western reality, where the spiritual world meets our material world, respecting, recognizing, integrated, but not absorbing or colonizing or merging. We need to understand, there were many points said, like, I think what Mario said also, like, understand and get inspired to create our own rituals without just copying and paste or trying to appropriate from things we see. We are in this great time, and many opportunities are arising, a time that maybe it was not even thinkable like 20, 30 years ago. But we're going fast, and we should be aware of that. We're going really fast, and many things could happen if we don't take that time. How does this look like? It could be a manager who goes through a unity experience, comes back to the workplace, realize that there is people working with him which are people and not just means to an end KPI or whatever, and bring that to the thing. It looks small, but this is how the big change can be. It could be like a family growing kids who are in touch with Pachamama, who understand that we are a part of everything and grow up with a different perception of our consumerist and extractive culture. Or it could look also like a friend of mine, we will call her Maria, that's not her name, which after 10 years of struggling with opiates and amphetamines and different drugs, managed to get on a long process, a year and a half, working with plant medicine and therapy and other support. She managed to get her life back to power, get back to be the sweet, beautiful woman she is, supporting other people, and being able to serve things like her mom passed away, for example, some months ago, and she still is able to suffer this, to grieve it, but without going into old habits. All these are possibilities, but there are also challenges that we need to be aware of. We do believe that, in my dream world, we shouldn't be talking about this, and in my dream world, our project shouldn't be needed. We know for what we can learn from the indigenous communities who still work with these plants that they don't need integration because they are fully integrated into the society. But so far, as Mark Aishala put in his new book, which is really good, by the way, we need to do this as a specific point, separated point, trying to bring this into our culture. And big challenges require committed individuals. So the plants are here to help us, but we need to work with them as allies, and we need to work. This is the main point. Nothing is going to change, or not much is going to change if you don't take the action. As I think it was Jodorowsky who put it like the consciousness without the act is sterile. So building our bridges and allowing us to find our own rituals. And this brings us back to the bridge, but now birthing an ancient future is there. We are going through really challenging times. Yeah, can you pass me the water? Way better. But also there are many, many big opportunities. And while I am fully convinced, and that's why I work on this, that integration and preparation model could be a part of a solution, at the end I am sure that it's a network of solutions we need to create to work and to birth this ancient future. So during these talks, during the time we spend here, I invite you to dream these chacarunas. Think about how you can build those bridges with other people, yourself, and allow these middle points to be built on the thing. And thank you very much. Really happy to be here, and yeah, reach out. Super happy to build bridges and connect. Thank you.
Okay. So I want to say something and to open a discussion. My name is Yuri. I'm originally Polish. I live in Estonia. I'm unfortunately also a psychologist. Okay. So one of the things that is very important for me about psychedelics and about any journeys is the journey is the experience. But what is important, the next step, is the integration. What does it mean to me now, at this moment? In the journey, I can get in touch with my ancestors and with my, ancient wisdom, my roots. Integration is what does it mean to me now? I'm integrated. What is the meaning of it? And then comes the third stage, in my opinion, which is the most important one, which is called application. So I had a journey, I had an experience, I integrated, I have an awareness what it means to me, and now what I'm going to do with it. So I'm not getting stuck in some kind of an idea that I have problems because my mother did not love me enough. What happens next? What are the applications of those experiences? So, talking about ancestors, many, many years ago, before I lost my mind in the transpersonal movement, I was a history teacher in school. And the message that I was giving at the time to my students, which were not very much interested in history, was how can you make one step to the future without knowing where you're coming from? What are our original roots? Where we're coming from, where we are now, and where we're going. So, I'm going to repeat again the most important sentence, in my opinion. The experience, the integration, and the application. Without application, getting stuck, we have all the excuses why we suffer and why we have all those so-called problems. Okay, so any questions, comments you have to the panel?
Both of you, but I had a spiritual teacher once who used to say that some people need solvent and some people need glue, right? In the context of integration and disintegration, right? That some people's journey is actually to have some kind of identity or ego structure of some kind because they're already living sort of disintegrated experience, not in a healthy way. And some people need solvent, they need actually, their work is actually to be dissolved, their structure, their ideas, their beliefs about themselves need to be loosened so that they can really open into life in a much bigger way. And that and maybe for all of us, for certain moments in our life that we need more of one and more of the other. Yeah? And so I'm curious about a little bit of question that was asked earlier this morning about when is the psychedelic journey really the right medicine? And these mean, like, and what is the medicine that's actually needed for that coming together that actually is necessary, as well as the getting off, right? Like that cycle that I loved how you described that. So, just any thoughts on that? I know it's a big question.
So when is a psychedelic experience necessary? And
Yeah, or just in general, even if we take it out of, it has to be psychedelic, but just in your work with people, how do you navigate that when you're working with someone and meeting someone? Like which direction is actually needing more support?
Well, this is one area that I think psychology and psychedelics can go quite well together, hand in hand, in terms of offering supports, offering psychotherapy, preparation, all of that when you're working with someone. These kind of more grounded, earthly integrated techniques. And in terms of when to go for the psychedelic experience, yeah, it's so personal, and it's always in relationship when someone feels ready for that. Because, as we know it can be quite disintegrating, it can be quite destabilizing as well. And something that sparked also from Andres about spiritual emergency, it kind of sounds like we're saying opposite things in a way of your talk about, spiritual emergency and how disintegration can get really dangerous. But actually, I think we agree, and we're quite aligned in that. And it's just that I suppose it's when spiritual emergence becomes emergency is when there is a lack of support, a lack of preparation, a lack of that kind of safety that's built, and that's really needed, kind of, in order to embark on a journey of disintegration, right? So, but maybe you have some more thoughts on that.
I mean, completely agree. I think that, I started this kind of working on integration, and the more I work with that, I realize it's more about preparation. Like integration, yes, but many of the problems we are seeing, they could have been, I will call resolved, because I don't think per se that a spiritual emergency, it's a bad thing. But without support, it can become pretty fast a bad thing. If you have prepared before and create a relationship, a therapeutic relationship with a therapist, for example, and then you go through an experience which is breaks your reality, and you are going through it, but you know that someone is there to pick the pieces and glue them back. The possibility that you go engage and you go deeper and deeper and deeper on that, it's reduced in a way. So it doesn't mean that you cannot go through a spiritual emergency if you prepare well, but it probably won't go as intense as it would be if you're just alone back in the thing. About the question about how, again, I'm not a therapist, right? My knowledge is also by talking with many therapists and what they explained to me, but I resonated with me this quote of, I think it's Maria Teresa de Avila, which is a mystic. She says this, create a big personality and then throw it to God. And many of the things seems to be resonating on that way, maybe a big part of preparation is, maybe don't do it now. Take 1 year, let's work on something on a therapeutical level, could be with a diet, with plants that are not psychoactive, in the vegetarianism, for example, context, right? Which I'm also not an expert, so I'm just putting information I'm getting. And then, if the time comes, you can do it. But if someone wants at the end do it anyway, and this is the thing, nobody's there to say, okay, don't do it. I do believe that with a proper preparation, at least you set the stage that whatever happens, there is a better support network around when the situation arises.
So the word dangerous was mentioned here. Okay. So for me, the most important thing in integration, okay, is as a psychologist, I don't diagnose and I don't have any interpretations. This is where it becomes dangerous. The question I'm asking is, what does it mean to you? Fritz Perls, the founder of Gestalt therapy, said that any interpretation is a waste of therapeutic time. Because what it means is that the therapist knows better than the client what's good for them. The most important question in therapy for me is, what does it mean to you? And because I have an academic degree in psychology, unfortunately, I sometimes need to say to the psychologist inside, shut up, okay? The person deep inside knows better. Now, Hannah, I have a question for you about integration and disintegration. The question is, everything in our life, from birth and even before that, some things that we've integrated are not ours, but a contamination in the environment we grew up. So does it mean that we need first to disintegrate what is not ours to make space to integrate our real true self?
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's always tricky talking about disintegration, integration, because they are, what we're talking about now is from the perspective of the self, right? So
yeah.
I'm an integrated being with all of these experiences or these parts of myself. And there's another way to look at it, which is that similar to the kind of birth and death cyclical process of when we are disintegrating, so say during a plant medicine journey, then we are actually becoming more integrated with, you know, with pure consciousness or with
Yeah.
that sort of, purity. And so in that sense, then disintegration is, gosh, I've lost myself already just talking about it. Can you remind me your question? It was about...
Okay, some things that we integrated, maybe unconsciously, with expanding our awareness, we might become aware that this is not ours. So when I say I'm not good enough,
yes.
Okay, which was mentioned here, whose voice is it? Where it comes from? Who have put this code in my computer?
Yeah.
Because there is symptom and there is a cause.
Yes, exactly.
And the cause is usually emotional. So for me personally, we need to distinguish between what is ours and what was given to us and does not fit in our real self.
Yeah, indeed. And that relates very well to this process of integration, disintegration. Because during our, whether it's a psychedelic or another process of disintegrating, that indeed it makes space for...
Yeah, to make space, exactly.
For a broader perspective on these, to say, oh, okay, I can see actually what's mine and what's not mine.
Self and then self.
Yeah, that's really self-awareness.
Another thing, Andres, that you said I found very important, a single person integrated with the plants can bring the changes outside the ceremony room into family and society. So that means, okay, when I see a client in front of me, okay, I imagine that the client is not sitting there alone. The family is there behind them as I call it the ghost in the therapy room, and even all the ancestors.
Yeah.
So the therapy is not only for one person, it's for the where he came from, where is he now, and where he's going to.
Yeah.
So we work on a much larger context.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been personally through those experiences too, and working through how you can work on, for example, in your ancestral line, and then things that you're not working directly just get fixed in a way. And I mean, what I mean there is what I was trying to make a point there on emphasis is like we also see people that they go from ceremony to ceremony, and they're just like like 3 weeks everything's fixed. Yeah. I now love my mom, and then back to ceremony in 3 weeks when that's there. Yeah. So this is like through an integration work, which can be through therapy or other measures. People can do what you did, the action. That's exactly the same. Like activate, do that seed that has been planted in ceremony, flower as a plant, then you don't need to go that much to work with the plants. And you can bring this integration into your life.
That's why I'm saying application.
Yeah,
What do I do with it?
Yes.
So this ceremony is a tool,
Yeah,
and if we don't use it, we lose it.
exactly. And like this is also like what we know spiritually and the tradition have known spiritually. Now there is also like the neuroscience on it. Like you have these windows of opportunity also to do many things and many changes. If you don't do anything, my personal opinion is afterglow goes, people go back to sit in ceremony.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
That if there is no action, there is no.
Oh yes, there
That-
is a kind of.
There's like some months or some time that things are. I still believe it's not what.
Ball, you know?
It's not black or white. I do believe that, for example, when you work with sacred medicines, there is an improvement just for the ceremony itself, but
You ask a question about who needs psychedelics or when it's needed. So let's go more basic question. Who needs therapy? Unfortunately, some of us think when something is going wrong, then I'll go to therapy. So I go to the dentist for a checkup or brush my teeth, not because there's something wrong. I take my car to a service, not because something is wrong. I do all those things to improve and to expand. So in a way, it's growth. It's about expanding our consciousness. It's all it's about. So we all need it. But psychedelic is only one thing. The plants are only one thing. There are other things around. Nothing works on its own.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
No, I mean, as a clinical psychologist and anthropologist, you know, there was a part of my life that I wasn't really very engaged doing research as a participant also on all these, you know, kind of development or self-development of the so-called New Age, you know, and I really participated in almost around 17 ceremonies of ayahuasca, you know, I mean, which were really mostly recreative because there was no integration, nothing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it was quite interesting because, you know, the people, oh, I'm going to find my ancestors. I'm going to find my truth. I mean, bullshit, you know. And they go ceremony by ceremony and nothing happens, you know. And, you know, I really got fed up with ayahuasca, you know. But as I became also a homeopath, and in fact I discovered ayahuasca homeopathically before I tried it. You know? And I found out that the difference, you know, with ayahuasca, that I'm really, you know, very faithful and render today, you know, and I'm grateful to Victoria Rose, because the experience of, you know, the context of the ceremony, I mean, makes the difference, makes really the difference. And action, as you mentioned, really makes the big difference, you know, it's not only the integration, but otherwise, you know, it's the cycle, you go back, you know, and yeah, I know, what are we going to do with this? This is really nodal.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, really
Yeah.
very, very important. Yes. No, I regret, you know, because I'm 63 and I started my psychoanalysis, you know, almost 40 years ago. And on that time, I read David Cooper, you know, that was working with LSD. And I said, wow, so great, you know, but I was in Portugal and there was no. And then, you know, I pleasure to do such a journey without a supporting, because even in psychoanalysis, we can really get crazy if we don't have a psychologist that, can hand us on the process. It's an incredible journey.
Yeah. So it's question not on integration, but being able to hold the space. Just hold the person.
Yeah, I'd like to say something just to invite deeper inquiry and also to ask both of you that are working so intimately with the integration aspect of medicine and in relation to what you said. I work with prenatal memory and pre and perinatal memory, which goes back to our preconception memories. And I'm really discovering through my own experience and witnessing many thousands of people go through these plant medicine journeys that it's becoming very apparent that we all have a deep cultural wound of separation, and that has a lot to do with how we are welcomed or not into our lives. And that, like what you were saying, Maria, it precedes birth. Our mothers often are separated from the pregnancy itself, and therefore looking for something or someone outside of herself to understand what's going on with her body, her baby, and this whole natural wisdom. And so the way in which we're in relationship to all our relations and all life, especially the mother, nature, is informed from our experiences that precede conception. So in my work of preparing individuals for ceremonial experience, it more often than not always goes back into their own birth and pre-birth memories, which are involved. And I wonder, I guess I'm very curious about how much of this you guys see in your practices and how valuable you feel it is to actually help the human being to come back into right relationship with life and with their quintessential nature that preceded all these conditioning, that from that space we can consciously engage with life and make a fully informed decision about, do I want to hang on with this being that happens to be the mushroom, or do I want to engage with this ancient wise one that happens to be ayahuasca, or do I want to hang on to the fungus for the rest of the afternoon?
We do.
I'm curious how this shows up in your practice. With the, I think it's really, really important when we start to think about preparation and integration of these ancient wisdom traditions, and that it really distills down to relationship actually.
I just want to share one sentence that I've heard recently. Nothing happens to me, everything happens for me, not to me.
Sorry?
Everything that happens does not happen to me, it happens for me. So it's about taking responsibility.
Yeah,
So,
and
yeah.
thank you. And really, I applaud your eloquence with and perspective of that. And I just want to highlight that relationship. Indeed, it's so much of preparation and integration is building relationship with other people, with ourselves, and also with the plant medicines, whatever spirits we're working with. You can build a relationship with ayahuasca without taking ayahuasca. So there's so much space to build these relationships beforehand and to continue cultivating them after the experience, so that you don't end up in that loop of continuing to go to the next ayahuasca retreat, but really building those relationships here in this embodied way.
Yeah.
But that is something that absolutely we see. And in a way, a lot of our plant medicine kind of disintegration experiences are like these peeling of layers, of conditionings, of other people's, planted ideas into our psyche, so that we can access that inner wisdom that is there all along, and then approach life from that way. So that is absolutely the approach that I take.
Yeah.
And also, because I'm facilitating breath work as well, usually it's kind of this really step-by-step preparation approach. So starting with building a relationship with yourself, with your body, because you need to be comfortable enough in this body before you're leaving the body completely, right? And the breath can be a beautiful tool to get there, and then often these prenatal memories or just experiences come up in that space as well. So it's a very important part of our experiences.
It's about connecting with myself.
Yeah.
And talking about a relationship and disintegration, okay? When we enter a new relationship, have we already disintegrated the previous relationship? Or we carry the previous relationships in our future relationships? And then create total emotional mess. So, I want to thank you because the word disintegration made a lot of sense for me from, I'm constantly talking about integration. I need to put the word disintegration more into my vocabulary. So thank you for that.
Me too. I did it for myself as well.
I mean, I don't have that much experience with prenatal topics in what I have worked because maybe because I haven't worked with the breathwork that much also. But I do completely agree with what you say, especially with the part of relationship and like relationship with ourselves. Can we separate that with relationship with the everything in a way? And I think that the plant medicine experience or the spiritual experience itself give us that short time that we are kind of like putting our heads out of the bottle and say like, oh, there's all there, and that those are seeds that then we can build to create the right relationship with ourselves and taking away the bit.
In a way that dissolves that illusion of separation, which is really, it really is a cultural thing. When we're probably, most of us are welcomed into our lives via industry.
Yeah.
And this is very interesting. We're the only culture that's doing that, and the only species. So, like, to actually come back to that, I find it, we're bringing our Western perspective into these traditions, and therefore it's like, how can I get more, extract more from this whole thing? But if we just kind of, I feel like the most efficient pathway to possibly come back into a right relationship with nature and all of life would be to go back to birth and even our pre-birth experiences. And I think that this will probably come into deeper inquiry as we move forward over the next decades of authorization of everything we're here talking about. It will be very fascinating to see.
The word harmony triggered me suddenly.
Yeah.
Okay? I was raised with the idea that I need to find safety and stability in life.
Yeah.
And then comes the word harmony. And for me, suddenly, it's something static. Nature out there, if you want to get in touch with it, okay, is changing all the time.
Yeah.
You cannot cross the same river twice.
No.
Because the river is changing, everything is flowing. And we're looking for harmony, stability, safety. We forget that nature has a bipolar disorder. The nature is manic depressive, it's changing all the time. And we need to be harmony.
But why harmony is something static? Harmony in the music is just keeps floating.
So this is it, that maybe from time to time I need to do therapy or psychedelic, not because I'm in crisis, but to adapt myself to the changes around me.
Yeah.
And flow with them. You know, some people are still Freudian, you know. Yeah, they are still Freudian. Till now. It's crazy.
I think that harmony it's like that river you mentioned, something floating on the river. That's harmony for me.
Yeah.
Like if you're too, and it's something I have confronted myself. If you're too stiff on something, and you break.
Yeah.
So that flexibility, that's the harmony of it. If the music follows with the harmony, which nature is brutal, nature is violent, everything is eating each other, but there is certain harmony on that.
Because I tell you, don't tell anybody it's a secret. from time to time, through my self-development, I reach enlightenment. And the day I reach enlightenment, the door opens, a new client comes to therapy and throws me totally out of my enlightenment. So I need to switch the light on from time to time, again and again.
There's something about perception there, that
Yeah.
when we perceive as disharmony is actually harmony in movements,
Yeah,
right? And it's also the same with maybe how we perceive our wounds or our divisions and things like this. That's actually part of our process
yeah.
of
So
integration.
for me, always have to check with ourselves and with other people what this word means to you in your dictionary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because each one of us has a separate, different dictionary. What harmony means to you?
Yeah. For me, I mean, what you are talking for me is homeostasis. You know, because harmony, it is something that is inside of us, not exactly outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that what you talked today about the rhythm and harmony.
Yeah.
The rhythm can change, the harmony can change, but you can keep going with it.
As long as you're aware of the change and don't block it.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it's stagnation. I think sometimes harmony can be confused with stagnation.
Yeah, exactly. This is what I was talking about. Exactly. Yeah.
That's why we
Yeah.
need to switch one.
Yeah. And when we run from one ceremony to the other, chasing an answer to a question we don't know how to formulate, it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
It is the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, the most important thing is to teach people to ask the question before looking for the answer.
Yeah. To prepare.
To prepare, yeah.
Yeah.
It's called a prepare, yeah.
Yeah, that's really important.
Yeah.
The questions, much more important than the answers.
Yeah, but you know those who come to you and say, you know, my ear was scratching, tell me what does it mean, because you're the psychologist. It's not a joke, I hear it sometimes. We learn how to give our power away and ask for answers from the outside when they are all there inside all the time.
Are we at time? Or when are we ending?
Whenever you want. Where would you like to end?
There's no end.
Why are you giving me the power away to end it for you?
For the first time, I have another question, but if we're not, we can end.
We still have time.
So I think I just want to expand this conversation to something you brought up, Hannah, which is more on the collective level, right? We deal with this so much at the individual level, right? And even the spiritual crisis is often experienced as a personal problem, but actually I would say it's more of a systemic problem. It's the fact that we're living in a system that doesn't know that's not living a spiritual life. We're not living an expanded nature-based life. So there's a way that we can experience ourselves as in crisis because of the mismatch between our inner experience and the reality or the perspectives around us, right? That's often where the distress comes
Yeah.
in, right? Like my heart is open and I walked into the office and everyone was beautiful, and amazing, and radiant, and they're just like, you didn't answer my email, you know, or just like, or they're just kind of in a whole different state of consciousness, and it, you know, just that disconnect can be experienced as distressing and painful. So I think, yes, having the individual therapist or friend who gets it is essential. But I think, you know, also you were speaking to this, right? Like we're also doing this consciousness expanding work within a specific environment and context. Right? And my work, I'm working more with organizations and systems. So we're not looking only for the individual awakeness, but how do we actually bring that spark of life? I love that image you have, like that flame, right? How do we bring that quality of aliveness into the whole team, into the organization, right?
Yeah.
Even without talking anything about, you know, psychedelics or any of this language or lingo, but there's a quality of aliveness and vitality and presence that is tangible. Yeah?
Yeah.
When an individual systemically is alive and present, and it's also tangible when
Expands.
yeah, when the collective, when the room, when the team, when the organization
Yeah.
is in that space. So, yeah, I don't know exactly what my question is, but I think that there's something about addressing that, and how do we support that aspect of integration?
Yeah.
Impacting the systems that we're part of, without taking them to an ayahuasca retreat.
Yeah.
You can talk about it if you want, but honestly, without saying a word, right? How do we come in and see the beauty, or see the presence, or see what's beyond, and how do we shape our environments and our systems?
Yeah.
I guess that's the question.
Can I?
Yeah.
I that's for me, it's like the point, right? Because, yeah, I do think also that, we have fucked it up really bad. But,
Oh yeah.
but every time I try to go into changing system, or I've been relating with it, it's like, can you fix something when you don't even know how to fix yourself in a way? And doesn't mean you cannot do it at the same time in a way. It's not like you need to be perfect to fix anything, but you need to be self-conscious of at least your own.
Okay. Can you fix something? Okay. Simple example. They spend billions to find a cure for cancer. None of the idiots is making research what has caused cancer in the first place. So when we're trying to fix, okay, how long ago it started and what happened in your life around the time?
Yeah, exactly.
Because what we're fixing, some we're fixing only symptoms.
That's the thing.
And when you cut the weeds in the garden, they'll grow back up next rain. Every gardener with that academic degree knows that you need to dig up the roots. You don't need to be a scientist to know that.
Yeah. And when one individual heals, surroundings are affected by it. Doesn't mean that they're going to heal and heal us. I don't even like the word. I'm kind of translating it from Spanish. That doesn't work. I've seen this. Like, you bring it. It happened to me. This is my side job. I have a main job that sustains me, and I manage a team. I manage a sales team. And through my work, it's like people open up to you, even if you don't tell them about anything, because, we're working. People take the opportunity to open up to you, and you can have an open ear. You can see these things as human beings. And that changes, and that's extrapolated. So not everyone can or should do psychedelics in a way. But the people who do, not only psychedelics, the people who do the work, they can bring that change to other people. Is this going to change our society? I don't know. But I think that's what we can do. Work on ourselves to work for the others in a way.
Yeah, and becoming aware of the language that we're using. A lot of our language is, we need to fix this, or we need to improve our team, or we need to rescue the environment because the environment's in crisis, and externalizing a lot of this crisis, when actually if we turn that around then and look within, then they're parallel, right? The individual work, the collective work, they're all interrelated. So I suppose it's kind of moving also away from that, how do we fix this, to how do we evolve with it, how do we build relationships again.
Decolonizing the mind.
Decolonizing the mind.
I've been trying to do that. I think there are 30 years already, and I think my mind is still colonized. So deep. So deep.
Yeah. So I have a very deep philosophical question. Is anybody hungry?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing.